The Lume Pad 2 is an AI-powered 3D tablet. Hang on. Did you just throw a bunch of buzzwords onto my script? No? So this thing, the Lume Pad 2, does feature AI. Yeah? Both cloud and on device. And it renders in 3D. Like actual 3D, different image to each eye, glasses-less 3D. Huh. That's cool. I'm James Bruce, you're watching MakeUseOf.com reviews. And today we're going to review the weirdest tablet ever invented. So this is the Lume Pad 2 from a company called Leia. Yes, exactly like the Star Wars princess. It's the most unique and fascinating thing I've seen in a long time, but I'm not convinced it has a market beyond a handful of specialized industries. But what even is it? Let's break it down. At the heart of it, it's a glasses-less 3D display. And it does this by using dual front-facing cameras to track the motion of your head and locate your eyes and adjust the picture accordingly. Each eye then sees a different picture thanks to a special layer that focuses and directs the light in a different direction. On top of that though, it's a tablet, an Android-based tablet in fact, and it's packed full of custom software that allows you to take 3D images and videos or use AI to transform existing videos into 3D, and there's even some games that will display in actual 3D. So the tablet itself is a 12.4-inch IPS display running at 120Hz refresh and 2560 by 1600 pixels with a pixel density of 244 ppi and at a 16:10 ratio. If we forget all the 3D stuff and just evaluate this as an Android tablet, I would be mostly impressed. It's a very solid, nice metal chassis. It feels good to the touch and there's a nice haptic touch feedback engine in there when typing. The case provided magnetically snaps on and enables a few reading angles. The interface is snappy, and other than the pre-installed software, it's a standard Google Android tablet with not too much horrible custom work done to the UI. It's a really nice tablet, in fact. Certainly one of the best Android tablets I've played with. You can forget using it outdoors though, with a maximum brightness of 450 nits in 2D mode and 300 nits in 3D. This is for indoor use only. With a Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset powering the Android 12 OS, it also features 8GB of LPDDR5 RAM and 128GB of UFS 3.1 storage. But I'm not going to harp on about the hardware because that's really not why you're watching this review. Instead, let's talk specifically about some of these built-in apps because that's really where the magic of this tablet lies. Beyond the whole glasses-less 3D screen effect, which is kind of difficult to show you on a 2D camera, or even on a 3D camera, because it wouldn't track a 3D camera, it only tracks human eyes, but just trust me on this, it's amazing. Starting off then, Leia Player. Now, as well as allowing you to view your own 3D camera roll, it also has a nice collection of sample images. In addition, tap over to the Leia Link tab, and you'll be able to access regular content you've taken on a normal smartphone, which their software can then magically transform into 3D. That's a part of the AI stuff, and it actually sort of works. It can also play back VR 180 and SBS side-by-side format videos, though you may need to change the file name. I tried watching an SBS formatted movie, and to be honest, the depth was very weak and there was no sound. I guess it was codec issues. Leia Player isn't currently on the same level as, say, VLC, when it comes to being able to play back random files, so that was a bit of a failure. But even if it had sound though, I probably wouldn't have bothered. I think a VR headset that's half the price would do a far better job of allowing you to view 3D movies. Leia Pics is a social network app for sharing and viewing others' 3D photos. It's a little bit niche perhaps, but a simple way to view others' work. I mean, it's just random images. I uploaded a few of my pigs, for instance, but most aren't particularly high resolution. I wonder if perhaps they were taken with the previous version of the Lume Pad. There's a clear difference in quality between a lot of the different photos. Leia Chat is even more niche, and it allows you to chat in 3D with a handful of other Lume Pad 2 users. LumiDream is a generative 3D art app, which I believe is a customized version of Stable Diffusion, but it could be completely proprietary. Either way, it allows you to type in a text prompt and then you get a custom 3D image out of it. However, this is a cloud service, and while your account comes with enough for about 250 images to be generated, after that you will need to buy more credits. Still, that's a pretty generous amount to start off with. Leia Viewer allows you to view Sketchfab 3D models. Obviously a great match for a 3D screen, so you can rotate, zoom, etc., as well as control the depth of the 3D effect. You'll need a Sketchfab account to view anything other than the built-in models, but this right here is probably the single biggest, most compelling use case of this tablet. It's an absolutely killer feature. LayerTube is a YouTube and Vimeo viewer, and you can share directly from the YouTube app. So if you find a video you want to watch in 3D, just share it over to the LayerTube app. I tried this with one of my own reviews, and to be honest, it wasn't so great. I mean, the review was obviously fantastic. The 3D effect wasn't great. I mean, it kind of worked, but the effect wasn't nearly as pronounced or as accurate as I was hoping it would be. There was certainly some glitches here and there, and it seemed to be a very basic sort of foreground separation from the background kind of 3D effect. But that's quite a lot of built-in apps, and there's also an app store, albeit a bit sparse right now. There's about 4 games total. Realistically, unless it's a first-party title, you're unlikely to get many developers on board for such a small market. And you can't just take an existing game and make them 3D. The 2 free game demos that I did download were fascinating tech demos, but ultimately a single level and not going to hold my attention for more than 5 minutes each, if that. And while there are a lot of built-in useful apps, you can't just open up VLC and play back, say, an SBS encoded movie in order to make use of the unique 3D technology. An app does need to specifically support what's called the Layer SDK. So it'll run generic Android apps for sure, just in 2D. In order to use 3D, it needs to be specially programmed for this tablet and only this tablet. So how is the 3D effect? This is impossible to show on video, sadly, but what I can talk about is the subjective quality and the 3D effect of the screen in general. Firstly, the degree of 3D effect varies by app. For instance, if I look at the Layer 3D model viewer app and check out the built-in model of the cyberpunk city, I can show you that the spire of the tower pops way out of the screen, almost 6 inches up from the surface. I can clearly see it here. Of course, you're limited within the bounds of the screen, so the moment the spire moves to the edge of the screen, it's lost. You may also have additional head tracking depending on what app you're running. So the dungeon demo game, for instance, not only displays in 3D with a unique image to each eye, it also tracks your head movement. So you can move around and it will change the angle at which you are viewing the dungeon. And the effect there is absolutely stunning. I've never experienced that without AR or a VR headset before. However, when it comes to things like videos or images, though, things taken through the 3D camera on the device even, the effect isn't nearly as pronounced, to the point that I just wouldn't bother watching 3D movies on this. It's just not compelling enough compared to doing the same thing in, say, big screen VR. Generally speaking, as long as you're not at too much of a weird angle, the face tracking seems to work fine. I didn't experience as many glitches there where it would snap back to 2D only mode, except when my son decided to stick his face in and see what all the fuss was about. Since it can't track more than one person at the same time, it gets confused, so don't do that. And sometimes it can take a few seconds to realize that there's a new viewer, and then it will sort of magically snap into 3D view. It's also not perfect though, and I would say there are 2 points that detract from the overall experience. First, there's a slight sort of, I'd call it a screen door type of effect, a dotted mesh across the screen. Presumably that's the technology, that's the lenticular layer, I guess it is, that separates each image for different eyes. And this is present even when it's not snapped into a 3D display mode. The tablet hardware is otherwise very nice and snappy just as a tablet. The screen quality could get annoying quickly. There's also a fairly obvious ghosting issue, by which I mean each eye can see the image destined for the other eye, albeit very faintly. Now, this isn't so much a criticism of this particular tablet as a probable flaw in the underlying technology, and it's not unique to these sort of glassesless displays either. If you've ever tried passive 3D movies where you have to wear a cheap pair of glasses with a sort of shaded lens, those also tend to have a fair bit of ghosting, and that's because you can't perfectly culminate the light into a particular direction. So your left eye is sort of coming in this direction, your right eye is coming in this direction. There's always going to be some sort of crossover. It can be good enough to get a great 3D effect, but if you pause and critically examine the image, you will see ghosting. This is more obvious on 3D model viewing if you have a dark background, of course. Overall, bright images tend to mask the ghosting, but A bright element on a dark background is more obvious. The tablet also features dual 16 megapixel rear cameras. Obviously, you need two cameras to make something in 3D. Curiously though, they're not spaced apart as human eyes would be. Every 3D camera I've ever used is set up exactly like a pair of human eyes because, of course, if you're taking video designed to be played back for human eyes in 3D, you want the correct spacing between the two images. But with the Lume Pad 2, it appears that may not be necessary, and that's because of the AI system. It can extrapolate the depth seemingly just fine from two closely spaced lenses. Now, it's a bit annoying when you first open the camera app. You have to wait a few seconds for the 3D image processing to pop up, but then you'll see it in the top left, and it'll show you a preview of where the depth is. So, okay, you're probably thinking, is this a fad? I mean, I was big into 3D projectors and TVs about a decade ago, but the releases of 3D movies largely dried up, and I think people realized that having to wear special glasses to watch a 3D movie was a bit of a faff, for often worse results than without. The beauty of the Lume Pad, of course, is that it works without glasses. I mean, if you need glasses, you should wear glasses, but it doesn't need special glasses. It just works. It really is pretty magical to behold, like something you'd find in a Harry Potter movie. It's a technological marvel, and I wish I had a better way to demonstrate this to you, but much like VR, it's something you need to experience to believe. The fact that it has a built-in AI system to convert non-3D content and a way to produce 3D photos and movies of your own on the device itself, I think that gives this legs. Even if the world stopped making 3D content tomorrow, you could still do it all yourself from this one device, and that's neat. They've clearly tried really hard to produce compelling content with a custom social network just for the Lume Pad, and they understand that you can't just have incredible technology, you need the apps and the content to go with it, so that's very encouraging. But understanding a problem and being able to solve it are two completely different things. The biggest limitation to this device is that it can't become a generic 3D output for any input source. If they had an HDMI import or dongle and could play back any SBS formatted input in 3D, that would be very compelling. For instance, the Goovis G3 Max, which I reviewed last week, takes any USB-C or HDMI input, whether that's a 3D Blu-ray player or a generic media player running VLC with some SBS formatted files, or even YouTube, or PC gaming with some software that outputs 3D games in side-by-side format. That's a thing. And it just works. It just displays them in 3D, any input. With the Lume Pad, everything you do has to be designed with the Layer SDK. It won't work with random Android apps, even if they are outputting SBS 3D format anything. And there's certainly no way currently to get an external input onto the device. So if there's not an app for it, then that's it. And frankly, it's not that easy to get your own content onto this device. I had to install some horrible random Android app just to browse over the network because the built-in Android file browser doesn't do that. It was just a horrible experience generally, just to copy a file. I think the real niche for this product will be with 3D modeling, at least with viewing the 3D models you've produced elsewhere and put on Sketchfab, which is again a very niche audience, I think. It's incredibly compelling to see your own 3D object design come to life, and with rendered 3D objects, the depth you can get from the tablet is unbelievably good. And for those handful of people who still find 3D photography to be compelling, you're going to love this. For most people though, I can see how they're trying to make it compelling for anyone, with a 3D-ified AI algorithm for any YouTube video, a camera on the back to make your own 3D photos, but on that front, it's just not that good. Just like I don't think anyone is going to record family moments using Apple Vision Pro's front-facing 3D camera, I can't see you lugging around a $1,000 tablet to take photos or videos either. And while dedicated 3D cameras do exist, like I said, it's not so easy to get the content onto here, and the market just isn't there. As a quick example, the subreddit for the Lume Pad, which you'd think everyone would be flocking to find content and app suggestions, has 105 members. If you have the previous Lume Pad and you do find it really compelling, this seems like an incredible update, no doubt. Get this one and you'll love it, that's the best I can say. The hardware is incredible, magical, and the software is trying so hard to find a real purpose. I just don't quite think it hits the mark. Yet, maybe it will in time. Anyway, that's it from me. Be sure to hit like if this review helped you to decide about the Lume Pad 2. Consider subscribing for more reviews of the coolest tech gadgets and the latest tech. And until next time, thanks for watching.